Greetings and a warm welcome from me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to explore the Leo full moon, which this year comes hard on the celestial heels of the Sun and Pluto shifting into the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is an air sign, fixed like Leo, but very much to do with detachment. With Pluto in the mix, we're talking about our collective consciousness. Whereas the sign of Leo, the luminary, the moon, how it feels, is much more about our individual need to be affectionate, to be warm and sociable. But the moon is immediately challenging the Sun and Pluto. But there's more than this, because of course Jupiter, the planet of growth and exuberance, is forging a T-square with both positions. But I'm going to show you more than that. There is a finger of God with the moon at the peak of this, also on this event, with Saturn in the mix. And also in the event chart natally, the ascendant is in Leo, but that pitches the moon into the 12th house, which is much more reflective and much more to do with an inward understanding of our deeper psychological needs. So not so Leonian at all, and the Sun and Pluto in the much more practical 6th house. But the 10th house of that event chart is conjunct Jupiter. So much exciting stuff to share with you. I will also go on to go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your Sun or your Ascendant. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for joining me once more. If you're new to our channel, this is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please share them. I do try to interact with each comment. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Now this event occurs at 5 degrees and 14 minutes across the 25th and 26th of January. It's actually Sydney where it's on the 26th, so on the screen now I'm showing exactly the timings for each of those big cities. Now if you want to relate to this event beyond just your zodiac sign and you're not so sure on your natal horoscope, because the event occurs in the fixed sign of Aquarius at 5 degrees and 14, either side of that, from say about 2 degrees to 7 degrees, be it for Taurus, fixed, Leo, Scorpio or Aquarius, there is going to be extra tension. If you're not sure of how to relate to it in that terms, you can take advantage of my unique offer. You can get your personal character analysis, your life roadmap. And with my special package, your 12-month transits. The transits are how the moving planets in the sky interact with your natal chart, which is totally unique to you. Just give me 3 pieces of birth data of time, date and place, or date and place, and I'll produce the reports for you. But also you'll get your free love, Zodiac, Chinese and Indian booklet. So this Leo full wolf moon occurs on the 25th of January for most of us, and the 26th of January in Australia. On the screen now you can see exactly the timings in all the major cities of the world. Occurring at 5 degrees and 14 minutes, it's in the first 10 degrees or the first decan of Leo. The sign of Leo is of course ruled by the Sun, and it's a fire sign which amps up that warmth and radiance. But because it's in that first 10 degrees, that also is increased. Let's look at the archetypes of the moon in Leo. Well, the moon's very much to do with protection, shelter, nurture, receptiveness, but in the sign of Leo, we are concerned a lot with ourselves, our individual needs. So our self-expression, our warmth, our sociability, our playfulness. If we have children or we would like children, those are important themes over the next couple of weeks. And Leo moon people and Sun can be very generous. And I actually think this is going to be a very generous full moon. Now on the other side of the heavens we have the Sun in Aquarius, which is actually in detriment. So this is its weakest point of its journey. And of course with Pluto here as well, it has a lot of power at the moment, but it's more detached, cooler, and it's an air sign. But like Leo, it's fixed, so can be a little bit resistant to change, despite the co-ruler, the modern ruler, Uranus, being very much encouraging us to embrace change. And Aquarius, of course, is very much to do with communication. So we're all thinking, or all conscious of where the future direction of society is going, the sign of Aquarius, but we're wanting to know how we can work this out for ourselves as individuals, the moon in Leo. Totally understandable. But this event does have a fixed star applying to it, which is Astrolus Australis, and this has some issues, but particularly around the loss of friendships. And of course the sun in Aquarius is very much about who we're connected to, our network, the people that are important to us, our higher ideals. So let's take a look at the event chart. And using Greenwich and Placidus, the ascendant is 19 degrees and 51 minutes in Leo. On the face of it, very heartwarming. But look closer, the moon is in house 12. This is a very sensitive location. Yes, we need the attention and the reinforcement of our identity in terms of people being aware of us, but actually we could feel quite tender. On the other side of the heavens, the Sun and Pluto are in the very pragmatic, practical 6th house, very much to do with functionality, how things work on an everyday basis, not very sensitive at all. And if we think about the more detached energy of Aquarius, I feel that that's us trying to get our heads around how this new world order will be. So as much as we're reaching into this event with the newly arrived duo of the Sun and Pluto in Aquarius, and we may want to welcome them and feel that this can have some upsides, but I think actually we're a little bit nervous. But Jupiter is T-squaring the 2 points, so there is Jupiter right at the top of the chart, so it's the most influential point, if you like, because it's in the daylight position of the chart in its northern hemisphere. Jupiter now going forwards after going direct on the 30th of December and forging a very positive link with Saturn through near to the first 3 months of this year. It's also in a pretty good angle to Venus, and therefore we have the 2 planets of fortune aligning really well. So that's saying if we're creative but industrious, that could be better for us in terms of marshalling our finances. What's not to like? Well, I want you to take a closer look at the position of Saturn. Saturn's in house 7. House 7 is open enemies. The moon's in the position that's to do with hidden enemies in traditional astrology. The 7th house is where we relate, so with Saturn there, we're cool. We're a little wary of where people are coming from. But it does forge a good link with Venus, so there's a stability between them, and that means that where relationships are very constructive and very sincere, there can be something shaping up that's really good. But if you see the angle between Saturn and Venus back to the moon, we have the finger of God, the Yod, or the finger of fate. So this particular moon, and especially close to that tricky fixed star, is not quite as bubbly as it may seem on the surface. And although Jupiter can, typically Jupiterians say, yeah, it's all going to be all right, you know, and I feel it is pushing us to dip into our reserves of kindness and to try to help out those who are less fortunate, particularly in terms of their psychological situation, the moon in the 12th house. We can use the warmth of Leo and the understanding of how any one of us can in some way meet circumstances in our life which are not easy. So if we have an awareness of how it feels for others, that's the Sun and Pluto in Aquarius, that can help us to be more protective. So there are some really good things to take from this if we push ourselves to do so, but I feel that it's not quite as straightforward as just balancing what we'd like to do as the collective against what we would like to do as individuals, which is what the Leo full moon is usually about. So this one is more complex. Now, if you are newer to astrology, I'm just sharing on the screen now the solar event chart that we can all collectively relate to. This moves the ascendant to 0 degrees Aries and the vernal point. And you can see we've got the path of fortune, the Sun and Pluto in house 11, which is all of us, friendships, networking, communication, and the moon in the 5th house, where we more traditionally expect the moon in Leo to be. But there's Saturn in house 12, so the psychological whammy comes with Saturn there. Saturn's asking us to be much more aware of psychological welfare. But the other thing is the sign of Pisces can be indefinable in a way because of the co-rulership of Neptune. And I think what Saturn's doing is making us much more aware of what we can't see but is affecting us physically. So that can be microplastics, it can be dust, it can be all the things that are added to the food chain or to consumer products that have loads of different poisons that are working around. We can't see them, but they are having an impact. And as Saturn goes through Pisces, it is going to make us more conscious of that through to when Saturn moves into Aries in 26. So just to say, with the event chart from a solar perspective, yes, we have the sociability of Aquarius, the warmth of Leo. We do have Jupiter in the 2nd house, which is where we may want to actually push back a little bit against any collective anxiety we're feeling and actually have a good time. But whether it's the event chart or the solar chart, we can see the 12th house is very strongly emphasized through the moon or Saturn. So however much we jolly things up, we still need to face up to some of the pressing concerns that we do have for this moment in personkind's history. So Aries, this full moon encourages you to give yourself the permission to have some fun. Now, that's not saying that you don't usually have fun, but with Jupiter in the mix in your 2nd house, enjoying the good things in life, whether it's calorific goodies, a nice meal, a few drinks with some friends, would actually be the ideal pick-me-up. But it's just the case that there may be different people who want to spend time with you. So you may have to be a little bit selective how you manage your time. It's also the case that if you are naturally very sociable, you may find that you want to pursue a hobby that's been neglected. If you're in a long-term romantic relationship, this would be a great chance to celebrate the things you have in common, but also get the passion going between you again by doing something more spontaneous. Most of all, because there's still a lot of energy in the sign of Capricorn, and of course you've had Pluto there for a very long time, in your 10th house, those worldly responsibilities haven't been easy. And once Saturn moved into your 12th house last March, maybe there were some strands that started to wind down in your situation. You've been encouraged to start some new things with the North Node in your sign, and of course the solar eclipse and the new moon of last spring. But still there has been perhaps the need to bend into what other people expect of you. So I feel it's time for a little bit of rock and roll, and the main challenge for you is whether you spend it with one individual person, one group of people, another group of people, and somewhere, somehow within the whole equation probably is going to be a little bit disappointed. So it's the way you handle the communication, Aquarius, around that is essential. So Taurus, for you, the moon is in house 4, the sun is in house 10, Jupiter is in house 1. So that's very much your individual enthusiasm. So whether it is about inviting people around to your home to play mine host, which could be something that really appeals to you, or you're trying to work something out in terms of balancing your work-life situation, which seems to be a challenge that many of us have these days. We have all these technological aids. We seem to have less and less time. So if something is a little bit out of kilter, say for example, you could amend your working hours to give you more flexibility for home and family needs. That may be something that you're going to tackle. On the other hand, you may be making the decision to pitch in more with your work, particularly with Pluto supporting the Sun, and take your talents more seriously, and you may need the support of someone close to you, so it may be you asking them to bend into your needs. So those are the type of equations that are going to play out over the next couple of weeks for you. But certainly with Jupiter and Uranus about to go direct in your sign, it's been in retrograde since the end of August, which means that things perhaps have been a bit choppier and not developing quite in the way you expected. But with all that energy still in your 9th house in Capricorn, there is a sense that things have to change. You're looking for some extra variety and stimulation in your life, whether it is at home, where you live, how you live there, or who with, or at work. So Gemini, life is about to get more exciting. It's going to speed up, which will suit you right to the end of your wingtips. And also there's going to be a big change, I feel, coming in over the next 6 months in terms of your overall philosophies. You're going to want to explore more. You're going to learn a lot of new ideas and ways of looking at things. But equally, you're going to share a lot of your experience and wisdom with others too. You're going to also find yourself traveling a lot more. But because Jupiter is in the mix with this particular event, a lot of the knowledge you gain over the next 2 weeks in particular may be of a more spiritual or psychological variety. Also, if you have felt a little bit on edge and stressed out since the end of August last year, finding it a bit trickier to sleep, for example, Uranus going direct on the 27th, 2 days after this event, is something that's going to be favourable too. It also then links up with Mars in the very deep and passionate 8th house. So your past knowledge and experience can come back to you in a financial way. Or is there someone that's starting to develop on your radar that you find very stimulating to be around, but also makes your pulse race faster too? This could be a person that wouldn't necessarily ordinarily be the type of person you'd be attracted to, but there's something about them, some mystery, but also an innate energy that you may find so much of a draw that you find it hard to resist, at least talking to them. So Cancer, this event occurs in your 2nd solar house, which is to do with everyday money, your self-worth, the foundations in your world, but also your appreciation of good food. On the other side of the heavens, the Sun and Pluto are in the 8th house, where you have to connect to others. So that could be a financial broker, a pension advisor, a bank. It may be that you're trying to get a business venture off the ground. With Jupiter informing this event in a positive way, your connections to others can definitely be valuable. But when it comes to expenditure, because Saturn is in the quincunx in your 9th house, which can be extravagant, even if Saturn isn't, just be mindful of that. If you are trying to micromanage the ins and outs of your financial situation, that Saturn's just asking you to be a little bit more cautious. Now, the other thing that I would say about this moon is that Saturn in the 9th house means that you could encounter someone who actually has got a lot of knowledge that can help you, but you could be a bit resistant to it because maybe you don't feel that they're your kind of person. Try to watch that, because you know the moon in the 2nd house is very redolent of when it's located in Taurus, which it's actually exalted in. And sometimes we do need to deal with people who maybe aren't empaths. They're not very sensitive. Their instincts aren't quite as emotionally tied up as yours may be. So if you can, try to stay businesslike over the next couple of weeks. Enjoy some treats, but obviously be mindful of just making sure the ins and outs in your situation, particularly in a close relationship. If you have a different approach to certain elements of your expenditure to a partner, that could cause some tensions that may need to be addressed. So Leo, this event each year is very much about relationships, but that doesn't mean to say you have to be in one or you even want to be in one. But we still have to relate First of all to ourselves, that's the big one, but also to other people, whether it's colleagues, family members or friends. But because Pluto's in the mix, what he's going to do from now through to the early part of September is really amp up your consciousness about how people may perceive you or what you feel you're not getting, because the moon is about our emotional needs. But also we can't forget that Saturn is applying to the moon in the quincunx. If you are in a relationship where you really don't feel heard, and it could even be of a financial kind, or it's just you feel that you're going through the motions, you don't feel there is enough spark, passion or energy, it's not energetically working for you, Saturn could push you to think very much of your needs and break free. But then because Jupiter is also in the mix in a much more productive way, maybe the relationship matter is with someone you work with. And maybe your natural generosity can be something that can move that relationship forwards, or perhaps you feel that that natural generosity gets taken advantage of. So these are all of the equations that you're going to be thinking carefully about over the next 2 weeks. So Virgo, for you, this event occurs in house 12, very much to do with the psychological dimension. And if I'm honest, one of the trickiest full moons of the year, and you have Pluto in your 6th house. But that's given you more oomph when it comes to that part of your nature that can really get into the detail of things and not be fobbed off by others. But because Jupiter is bringing a more expansive, freedom-loving part of your nature to the fore, if there is a job or a responsibility or obligation you have that's become a little bit of a grind, it can feed into your psychology. But Jupiter's saying, look, give yourself permission to break free. You don't have to be trapped into this situation if it's not making you happy. But you could look across the heavens to Saturn in the quincunx with the moon and think, yes, but what about my partner? What about what will other people feel or think about me? Well, that's obviously your decision. If you work in an office-based environment, a 12th, 6th house full moon can bring office politics to the fore. The problem is that the people who don't necessarily have our best interests at heart don't always tell us exactly what the issue is. They do it through kind of very subtly excluding. But because Jupiter is in a very demanding part of your chart in terms of people being honest with you, and Saturn as well in a way, I don't feel that you're in the mood to be mucked around. So if there is something that isn't working for you, you do have an opportunity to eject from it. Jupiter and Uranus going direct on Saturday the 27th will be good for you, particularly because Uranus is in such a powerful link with Mars. So if you need to break away from that restraining, draining, tiring, difficult environment, relationship or situation, it's over to you. So Libra, the event for you occurs in your 11th house. That's your connection to others. It's the kind of flip of the event. It's the kind of Aquarian thing, but it's coming through the prism of Leo. And that's your need in a way. So in your friendship group or your interest, you need to feel that you're enriched by them, that people take you seriously, that they value you. The other side of the equation, the Sun and Pluto, suggests that if you're not quite able to be fully, as you see it, authentically yourself with certain people, they may not be the right people for you. That's the truth of the matter. Also, because Saturn is applying to the moon in an awkward quincunx, if you have some health issues or some constraints around your work or availability, that also could be getting in the way of you really having as fulfilling a social or even romantic life as you want. And when it comes to romance, I think what the full moon is asking you, do you see yourself being with your partner if you're in that relationship for the long term? If not, then maybe Uranus about to go direct in your 8th house on the 27th is going to give you some big decisions to make. You do have the collective that's replaced Pluto and the Sun in terms of Venus, Mercury and Mars, all in the sign of Capricorn. So security and stability are still important, but if you feel your life is lacking a little bit of drama, flair and passion, this full moon is asking you to seek that out. So this full moon, Scorpio, is particularly fascinating because your higher octave modern ruler, Pluto, just into Aquarius, through to the early part of September, is going to see you thinking a lot about where you live, how you live there, and with whom, about your own inner emotional development and growth. If you're someone who's very much into personal development, Pluto will be something you can work with in a really positive and dynamic way. But you have a reputation for being quite private. I like to think that all individuals have their own unique blueprint. You could, for example, have some chatty Libran in your chart or some gregarious Sagittarius. But if you are a little bit more like that archetype, this moon does occur in the noon part of your chart. So however you're feeling, and Jupiter suggests you could be feeling quite cheerful, it's going to be quite apparent to other people what's going on. There could be one area that requires a little bit of care, however, because with Saturn in your 5th house of romance, if the balance between what you put into a situation in terms of home and domestic chores and your professional situation isn't being quite matched as you see it by a partner, that could be the source of a little bit of tension. But the choice is, with Jupiter in your opposite sign and Uranus about to go direct on the 27th, to ventilate that. Sagittarius, the full moon for you is in your 9th house. The 9th house is very redolent of the core energies of your sign. It's an openness to what's fresh and new and creates variety and stimulation. It's the big picture. The Sun and Pluto, on the other hand, are in the part of your situation to do with everyday conversations and thoughts. Your ruler Jupiter is informing this event in a very positive way. So there's lots of conversations. Are those conversations going to be about your daily structure? Jupiter, Uranus has been retrograde in that area since late August, and if things have felt tense, a little chaotic, unsettled, once Uranus goes direct on the 27th, that's going to help hugely. I feel that you could find yourself applying for a job as well. With Mars angling up to Uranus by the 29th exactly, taking a bold approach in your inimitable way can pay off brilliantly well for you. What's not to like? Well, it's just perhaps your own inner relationship with yourself, because Saturn in your 4th house could in some ways be reaffirming some negative thinking, stopping you from really going for situations in the way that you have the reputation for. It's understandable. Saturn will highlight where we feel more vulnerable, or perhaps you're just supporting others in your family or emotional world that has meant that your own situation has been under strain. So I just feel that that part of you that really can be very open-minded to different approaches is what's really going to be your astral ace over the next 2 weeks. So Capricorn, for you, the moon is emphasizing a part of your chart that's very sensitive, very delicate, which can be to do with transformations. But it can also be to do with some anxieties at the 8th house, but not anxieties that we're perhaps wanting to be particularly open about. Saturn's also applying to the moon in a tense way in the quincunx, and that's in the part of your chart to do with your thinking. You could find that your thinking at the moment is a bit resistant to be too all in when it comes to any kind of equation, whether it's a business one or a romantic one, but you're actually coming into quite a lot of form, to be honest. Venus coming into your sign on the Tuesday, you have Mercury and Mars, Uranus goes direct, and Jupiter applies to this event as well. And that first house energy of Mercury, Venus and Mars, and in the case of Mars connecting to Uranus, and Uranus going direct by the end of this week, suggests you'd be right to just hold back a little bit if you're trying to work out how sincere someone is in terms of an attraction, or in terms of a business situation, or in terms of an investment situation, or in terms of just talking about the household budget and trying to get people to agree. I feel that give yourself a little bit of flexibility, because you're really going to articulate yourself very powerfully very soon. Aquarius, each year when this full moon happens, it's always a challenge to your need to be an individual, because, do you know, Leo energy can be very much to do with being mindful of how people view us. It's kind of looking around to check that we're fitting in, we're conforming in some way. Yet your modern ruler Uranus doesn't work that well in Leo. That's where I have it, because it's in detriment. So if you're one of those naturally rebellious types of Aquarius, this particular full moon with Pluto in your camp now could see you decide to really go for it and not worry too much what anyone else thinks. Now, because Jupiter is forging a mainly favourable angle to both positions, your sensitivity, whether it's around a partnership, around people you need to work with, is going to be a helpful asset. Your other ruler, however, Saturn, is in that tense angle to the moon, and that's not so easy. So second, 7th house suggests there could be some tensions in a partnership over money, or differences of opinion over attitudes or values. However, by the end of this week, your modern ruler Uranus goes direct after treading water since the end of August last year, and it's going to forge a brilliant link to Mars. So something you've been working on in the background could be something you're determined to drive forwards with. And sometimes in life, we do have to have conviction to do what's right for us, even if it does upset the proverbial and celestial apple cart. So Pisces, for you, this event occurs in your 6th solar house, very much to do with the practicalities, your daily functionality and your organisation. If you're one of those Pisces people who has your home very ordered and that gives you a sense of security, well, this particular full moon is not actually going to be influential in that regard. If you're someone who's much more laissez-faire about your home situation, perhaps you can have a declutter, a sort out, a tidy up, because actually that can have an impact on your emotional well-being, the Sun and Pluto in your 12th house. Either way, with Jupiter and Uranus in your 3rd house, there can be a conversation about it all. But if you are very meticulous at home, are you in some way starving yourself of being more in touch with your feeling side by just having quite that order? And in a way, is there a need for that, which is a bit of a reflex? So that's something that Pluto could provoke you to think about over the next 6 months, to become much more accustomed to what your inner needs and motivations are about. With Saturn in your sign applying to the 6th house, the first 6th house, that's a bit more awkward. If there's a responsibility or obligation or job you have, which you're finding a bit burdensome, or the people you work with are not very trustworthy, or the atmosphere is not very good, I think Saturn's sort of saying to you, particularly with Uranus going direct on the 27th, you need to perhaps have a little bit of a rethink, and if need be, give yourself the permission to explore other opportunities where you could feel that you can be more at ease, both in your body, but also in your heart. It's been a real pleasure being with you for this Leo full moon. I'd be most grateful if you did subscribe, like, or comment, or share. Thank you.